Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. So, this happened to me, a 27-year-old female, about 6 years ago. At that time, I was working in a bar, so I got off work pretty late, usually around 3 a.m. Since I live quite close to the bar, I would always walk home after my shift. There were two different routes that I could take. One was along the street where most of the city's bars and clubs were, and it was usually really crowded. But since I was exhausted and I didn't want to see any more people that night, I took the other route, which was much quieter but also darker, and I never felt very safe there at night. As I was walking, a group of drunk guys approached me, blocking my way. I made it clear that I had no interest in talking to them, so they eventually let me pass. A nearby taxi driver must have seen what happened because he rolled down his window and asked if I needed a ride home. I declined, saying that I didn't have far to go, but he insisted, saying that he wouldn't charge me. I thought maybe he was just looking out for me since he had seen the incident with the drunk guys. So I made the really stupid decision to accept his offer. After I got in, he asked for my address and then we started driving. I even offered to pay him, but he refused. And shortly after, we arrived near my home. But instead of stopping, he drove past it. I asked where he was going, and he acted like it was an accident, saying that he was just looking for a place to turn around. But then he kept driving for a few more minutes until we ended up in an industrial area where he pulled into a dead end. At this point, I was terrified, but I didn't know what to do, especially since my phone had died earlier. I just said, "Well, this is a perfect opportunity for you to turn around." He looked at me, and I think he got scared to follow through with whatever he had planned. And after a moment, he simply said that I was right, turned the car around, and then drove me back to my place. My heart was pounding as I got out of the car, but I was really grateful that nothing terrible happened that night. I know it was incredibly stupid to get into the car in the first place, and I still don't fully understand why I made that decision, but I think I just got lucky in the end. So, I know many of the Redditors here might have never been to Brazil or know of the happenings in Brazil. As a rule of thumb, you stay alert in Brazil. When you're walking around in major cities like Rio, Sao Paulo, you remain on high alert and you use common sense. Don't flash your fancy watch or your fancy phone. Don't wear some blingy chain around your neck. Don't wear a fat diamond engagement ring while walking down the street and many more. Now, there are parts of the city that are quite safe and you will have zero issues. But there are some parts where you use common sense, and of course, every city in the world has sketchy places you avoid unless you want to end up raped, robbed, or worse. I have been living in Brazil for 7 years. I moved here with my wife who is Brazilian. On a Thursday evening, we went to our local mall. It's not a very famous one. You won't find a Chanel or Gucci in this mall, but you will find some decent brands like Adidas and what have you. We opt to park in the highest level of the parking tower as it's open and well slightly more spacious as we have a bigger SUV. We enter the mall to run some errands, pick up our dry cleaning, grab some food and hit the stationery store. We realize quickly that We seemed to be followed by a boy in his early 20s or maybe in his late teens. In fact, it looked like he had on a school uniform under his hoodie, and he had a backpack on too. My first language is English, so I speak English with my wife. She is also a native English speaker regardless of being Brazilian herself. This does draw attention to us, as almost no one here speaks English, unless it's working professionals in some financial districts in the city, and even that is seldom. We realize that we are being followed by this kid, but we think we are being quite paranoid. Maybe we made it apparent that we were onto him, or that we might have caught wind. But we enter the chocolate store to wait it out and see if he waits or passes on. He seemed to go away, so we just figured that we were being paranoid. We proceed to the open area top-level parking, and as I approach and click unlock on the key fob getting closer to the car, I notice one taillight has a strange orange glow instead of the regular red hue. We reach the car, and I notice many pieces of my broken taillights on the floor. Within a second of reaching our car and taking in what happened, another car pulls up next to us and then honks at us. I look at the windshield and notice that it's our vet and her husband. They smile at us and come out and say hi to us. We tell them, "Well, look, someone hit our car." And then how terrible it is. My vet's husband and I inspect the car and notice the taillights were broken deliberately, as no other part of the car was damaged, so there was no way that another car hit our car and just went about their way. No, this was a person purposely just breaking our taillights. Or maybe a motorbike? Confused, we just go back inside the mall, seek out security, and then head to the security office. The mall has insurance, so they said that they would proceed to start the paperwork on getting our lights fixed. They also looked up the video, and in the multiple cameras, you can clearly see that the guy who we thought was following us was accompanied by someone else and hurrying around a corner towards us as my wife and I approached our car. But they stopped as my vet and her husband got out of the car and started talking to us. You could see them in the camera just calmly turn around and walk away, all whilst constantly looking back. Security proceeds to alert all the guards and call the police and start a search for the young sleuths. The security then told us that a few malls and banks have been hit by thieves who will break your taillights just to distract you into standing and staying outside of your car, as they run up behind you and then usher you into your car at gunpoint and then order you to go to the nearest ATM and clean your accounts out, or even worse. It was ridiculous luck that at that exact moment, our vet just happened to pull up right next to our car. A minute earlier or later, and I believe we would have been kidnapped. I am never going back to that mall, or at least never parking away from any of the mall entrances, and we have decided to speak in Portuguese and keep our English to a minimum when we are out and about to draw less attention to ourselves. Hey, let's not meet. I came across this community just today, and I remembered something that happened to me and two of my friends almost 20 years ago, so the memories are a little blurry. The three of us were at the ripe age of 5 and 6, and we were already pretty good friends since our older sisters went to the same class. So, we were pretty excited to join in on their school's field trip to Transylvania for a couple of days. We visited numerous museums and other cultural and historical sites. On one of those days, We visited the ruins of a historical castle, which was beside a village on a smaller mountain, surrounded by forest and roads leading to bigger towns. Ruins like this are all over Transylvania, so it didn't have much infrastructure except for a parking lot and the roads connected to it. After the mandatory inspection of the ruin, the teachers allowed the class and us three bozos to have an hour of free time for playing, on the note that we do not go too far. So, we played hide and seek with the older kids of my sister's class. Both my friends and myself had a beef with our older sisters, and we thought that this would be an opportunity like no other to show them who the superior beings are in our families. So, when it was our time to hide, we came up with a plan to ignore our teacher's words and then hide somewhere that they would never find us. We started to run towards the ruins of the castle and hid at the parking lot behind it. It was a little further away than we were allowed to go from the place where our teachers and my sister's class was, and definitely out of sight. Our plan was to scare the shit out of our sisters and only come out victoriously when they had multiple panic attacks. There were only a handful of cars and only a person or two except for us. And the game started a while ago and we were hiding behind a car when an older man around 40 approached us. He had a mustache and a beer belly and was around 5'7" tall. It was obvious that he listened to us talk and giggle about what a great hiding spot we found. And with a smile, he suggested that we should hide in the back of his car and pointed at an old and rather trashy car. Now, this is the moment where any kid with a basic set of survival instincts would run back to the teachers and tell them everything. But not me and one of my friends. The guy even suggested that he would cover us with a couple of blankets once we hide in the back seat. I was so excited about beating my sister in a silly little game that I didn't even realize how creepy that sounds. So, I said okay with a mentioned similarly excited friend of mine. Luckily for us though, the third kid in our friend group still had his sanity, so he politely refused and suggested that we should go back to the teachers. The guy tried to convince us a couple of times, but I guess he didn't want to risk being more aggressive with the whole class and teachers in the nearby area. So, we left and walked back to the others, disappointed and confused why our friend was such a buzzkill. We didn't talk about what happened to our teachers nor to anyone after, because despite how weird it was, we couldn't tell for sure if the stranger was actually a bad guy. Looking back, it was definitely a bad call, but we weren't the sharpest tools in the shed at that time. I'm not entirely sure if the guy really wanted to do something horrible to us, or if he was just being friendly. But looking back, it was definitely creepy. Long story short, don't get into strangers' cars no matter how much it would piss off your sister. And to the stranger who wanted 3 kids in the back seat of his car, let's never meet again. So this happened when I was young, maybe early 2000s. I had to have been 5 or 6, and I was born in California and had lived there for about 11 years before moving across the country. My mom and dad are separated, so I'm used to visiting my dad every weekend. We lived in a small apartment about a 10-minute walk from a small convenience store/gas station and literally across the street from a Barnes & Noble that my mom worked at. My dad was lonely, but also a bit insufferable, which I realized later. So occasionally, there would be a new woman over, He would introduce us to each other, and I would go back to watching cartoons. One day, he brought home another woman, again introducing us. She said her name was Lori. I never had a second thought about her. She didn't look familiar, and the name wasn't familiar either. I just continued to watch my cartoons. My dad said that he needed to grab cigarettes or something from the convenience store around the corner and that he would be right back. And not wanting to leave me alone, he asked Lori to watch me for a minute. But as soon as he left and was out of sight, I think Lori said that we should go walk to the bookstore or just go for a walk. Again, I can't remember it exactly. I just remember holding her hand and walking across the street to the Barnes & Noble. We went inside and I looked at the people at the checkout to see if my mom was there. She wasn't, but I just shrugged it off. We got to about halfway through the store when I heard a familiar voice call my name. It was my mom's friend and coworker Lucy. We would often go to her house and I would play video games with her two sons. I was immediately excited to see her and I just yelled her name. She said, "Hey, come here for a minute." And I ran up and gave her a hug. At that point, she started walking me somewhere else. I think she had asked if I wanted a lollipop or something and walked me to the employees only office in the back. I hadn't even realized that Lori had left. Lucy had said something into the radio and told me to wait in the office. I now realized that she had called security. Apparently, I was basically being kidnapped and I just had no idea. I found out later in life that Lori's children were taken from her because she wasn't fit to take care of them, and that she also worked at that Barnes & Noble and then was fired. So, my mom and Lucy knew all about how crazy she was. Lucy had called my mom and then told her what happened. She immediately came to pick me up and then drove me back to my dad's apartment to chew him out. I can't remember if my mom took me back with her or left me with my dad after that, but I still went to visit him every weekend after. I don't know if Lori was found and arrested or what would have happened if Lucy hadn't been working that day or if she never even saw me. I'm just so glad that she did. So, to crazy Lori, who somehow enticed my dad and then tried to kidnap me, I doubt that we'll ever run into each other again, but even so, let's never meet again. I, a 25-year-old female, live in Seattle, and yesterday I stopped at a gas station in the late afternoon. This station had two sets of pumps, one by the storefront on the main road and another parallel to the cross street, a bit further away. I parked at the pump in front of the store, and there were no other cars or people around except for a van that parked at the other set of pumps. As soon as I parked, I saw a woman walking from the van and towards the store. It was a rainy, gloomy day and she was in a floral dress that looked very cutesy Christian cottage woman. Well, hopefully, that paints the picture. She looked slightly confused and was subtly looking in the window of my car before she approached me after I opened my door. She was seemingly distressed and told me that she had no gas, was stranded, and had to drive 30 miles to get home. I had an unsettling feeling about the interaction, and I told her that I was broke and that I didn't have 30 miles of gas money to help her. She then said that she didn't want money, but she needed me to come over to her car to help her. She kept repeating that I just needed to come to her car. I looked towards the van, and I noticed the rear window completely covered with black tape, and the car looked noticeably disheveled. I knew at that point that I would be going nowhere near her car or getting out of mine at all. After refusing her multiple times, she walks back to the van. It was one of those with the sliding rear doors, and when she returned, she slid it open slightly, and I could see that she spoke to someone in the back seat. At this point, a Mercedes pulls up at the pump right across from her, and then a man gets out. She does not approach him at all, and then just drives off. I know this isn't the craziest encounter. In the moment it felt off, but it wasn't until a few minutes after that the details sunk in and I realized what it could have been. Maybe I'm being dramatic, and perhaps it was nothing at all, but I do have good intuition, and something didn't feel right from the start. I'm a female, and I was 9 years old when this happened. My parents used to work as night market vendors. They were selling shoes back then. My mom did warn me to stay cautious and not wander off too far, especially at night. I did listen, as I have always felt anxious as a kid. I always have this feeling where I am in constant danger. One night, I was playing beside my parents' van. My parents were attending the customers, so they had no attention on me. As I was playing, acting as if I'm a Pokemon trainer, I saw a glimpse of a man. The man was tall and skinny. He was hiding behind an abandoned burger stall just a few meters away from me. I kept myself on high alert while I played, and the man slowly emerged from the shadow and showed me 1 ringgit on his hand. For those who do not know, that is Malaysian currency, by the way. He beckoned his hand, inviting me to come closer. I knew it from the start that this is the same thing that my mom had always warned me about. Man in the shadows, luring kids to come closer. It all made sense to me. So I backed away, trying to keep myself closer to the light and in the eye of the crowd. But the man crept in closer, raising his hand for me to see the cash at hand. He then put the money on the table and then stepped away. It's clear that he wanted me to come and get it. I felt super unsafe, so I turned around and played quietly, literally in front of my parents. I picked up a hammer and I gently swished it around, thinking that the man would think I'm dangerous. I thought that I was safe, but the man was persistent. He blended in with the crowds, now with much bigger cash in his hand. He stood far, a strategic spot where he could run away without being seen. That's when I had enough, and I felt 100% creeped out. I came to my mom and I told her that I didn't feel well at all. So she asked me to stay in our van if that's the case, so I got in. I kept looking through the window for a whole minute, and the man was nowhere to be found, so I thought that he was gone. With a sigh of relief, I lay in my van telling myself that I should just go to sleep. That's when I see a head with a familiar haircut walking in front of the van window to the other door, a door that I know is unlocked. I immediately got out of the van and ran to my mom, and I told her that there was a man with money telling me to come closer. My mom asked me to show my dad where the man with the money is. My dad followed me, but the man had disappeared, leaving the same 1 ringgit on top of the same table. I point the money to my dad, and he approached the table and took the money and gave it to me, and then he told me to stay inside. That was the last time that I saw the man. It always made me question how many other victims he had. Has he been caught? Or is he in jail? I'm male and 30. I was walking back home at night, kind of depressed because a loved one just died. The street I walk home to is almost always empty, with a few cars or motorbikes, and it's quite long too. It's a romantic street where I can enjoy my own thoughts. As I walked towards a big intersection on that street, a Renault or Peugeot, I'd say, wanted to turn the corner on that intersection. It's one of those cars or small vans that people who sell stuff use, since it has quite a spacious back and you can even bend the back seats to add to that space. So, I naturally stop for him to go ahead and turn. But the guy stops right in front of me in the middle of the turn, so my immediate thought was, This guy want to ask for some directions or something? But the dude does nothing. I can't see him well at night, but I can tell that he's facing me holding the wheel. After a small bit of time, about 5 seconds I would say, I start having doubts since this dude doesn't ask for anything, doesn't lower the window, nothing. So, I immediately start retreating as if going back from the direction that I came from. Instantly, the guy reverses and turns back as if tracking my movement and wanting to go to the direction that I would walk away from. After seeing that, I immediately switch back to going to the front side, and this man does the same thing. And to my horror, his back left side door is open. And here, I start to hard panic. After looking back, I see another car coming down the street behind me. My brain is hard panicking here. Is this one of his friends? Is my first reflex. But thank God that it's a normal human being that is also trying to turn the same corner. I assume that he saw the part where I'm staring at the luggage van going back and forth. I also assume that I look scared or paranoid to him too. So, he simply cuts in front of this bastard and yells something to me. But I honestly didn't hear him. But I used his turn to also take some distance from this man, and I had the idea to call the police. But before the call is even dialed, I start acting completely safe and calm while talking to the phone and pointing with my hands as if I'm trying to figure out how to tell them the exact location. This bastard starts backing off the turn back to the original direction that he was facing before trying to turn. And then he runs straight ahead with his back left door open. The other car, however, that cut in front of him just drove off normally without stopping after or anything. After that bastard drove off, I stopped the police call and I simply walked back home from the more safe path. While walking back home, I started having doubts that maybe he really was trying to ask me for something, but the fact that he didn't lower the window and had an open back left door led me to think that he might try to spray me with some shit if I try to go close to the window. P.S. I stopped the police call because my family is on a visit for the dead loved one that I mentioned, and I don't want to worry them with extra crap on the side. I have so many encounters that I could write about. I seem to be a magnet for weird or creepy happenings. This occurred when I was around 19 or 20. And my life was a mess to say the least, and I was under a lot of pressure. But one of my favorite things to do was go to a used bookstore that I have gone to since I was little. You can exchange books for store credit, so I hadn't had to really pay for a book in years. This bookstore was in a strip mall, and there was a 7-Eleven where I would often get myself a soda and sometimes cigarettes. The people at the bookstore didn't care if I had a drink in there. The men there at the 7-Eleven, who were probably in their 40s, were checking me out and making some comments. When I bought my cigarettes and the cashier saw that I was over 18, he said, "Wow, you're 20? I thought you were so much younger. Doesn't she look younger?" And the other men working there agreed. It seemed like such an odd thing to say. I wanted to sit at the Starbucks across the street, but there was no seating, So I just lit my cigarette at the 7-Eleven, and it turned out that the cashier decided to take his break and smoke at the same time. I tried to be casual and not seem creeped out, but my guard was up, so I wandered over to the store to stay away from whatever they were doing. I was in the bookstore for a while. Then, somehow, I lost track of where I parked. I swear, I could lose my car anywhere. I was wandering around the parking lot and I stepped between two trucks. Randomly, the 7-Eleven worker stepped in front of me, saying that I had to come back in. I told him in a pretty dismissive way that I had work, and I stepped forward. He repositioned himself so I couldn't pass him without spilling my drink and walking under his arm. He claimed that the cashier really needed my number. He claimed that at 5 p.m. they were going to a party and that I could come to the back of the store and drink until they left. It was around 4:30 at that time, I think. I told him that I had to work, and again, I tried to move around him. He had taken a few steps forward, so I had less room, but I am small and I tried backing up to go in between the other cars. After a couple of minutes of this, I decided to go inside the store because at least it had cameras. I saw two cops walking out as the employee led me in. I wanted to stop them, but they were moving too fast for me to try and grab onto one or something. In hindsight, I could have just yelled something, but I didn't think of it at that time. I also have notoriously bad luck with cops, so that didn't feel like the safest option either. When I came back in, they had already selected a mini bottle of liquor for me. The cashier was explaining how this party on a Wednesday at 5 p.m. was going to be awesome, and there would be substances and alcohol, and I was going to have so much fun. I kind of, and, oh yeah, through that conversation because I knew that there was no party. And finally, the cashier got around to what he wanted, which was demanding my number. The other employee moved to the door and the cashier was hounding me for my number. I decided that the best route was to use a number with a 555 in the middle because apparently those are used for Hollywood phone numbers. They tried to get me to the back, but I said that I had to work and that I would go to the next party with them. I was trying to placate them but still get out. Also, somehow, no one else was in this 7-Eleven and I was fending off two creeps with nothing but a soda and a bag of books. I finally appeased them and I exited, but I knew that they would be watching me. I knew that I couldn't walk to my car and then go off do my nanny job because I didn't want them to see my car. I walked as calmly as I could to another store and frantically called the dad of the kids that I was going to watch. At this point, I broke down and I was shaking and crying. His wife was at work, so he was really my only hope to get out of there quickly. He pulled up in front of the store, and then I jumped inside. I caught a glimpse of one of them looking out the window, but I don't think that they saw me. It wasn't until late that night that we went and picked up my car. My friends have different ideas of what they wanted, whether it was trafficking, kidnapping, or just holding me in the gas station. I still don't know. But whatever it was, they definitely didn't have good intentions. Looking back, I can laugh a little because as soon as the dad came, I noticed a hammer in his car and I asked if he planned on attacking them. And just for him to say, "Well, you never know when you might need a hammer." This is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared. because your fear feeds me.